The Law of One, Book 5, Fragment 23, Session 38, March 13th, 1981. Jim. Serving as the instrument for the Ra contact was very wearing on Carla. She would lose between 2 and 3 pounds per session, and the psychic greeting component of the contact often intensified her arthritic distortions to the point that her functioning on all levels was severely curtailed. Thus, Don and I had hoped that one or the other of us could take her place from time to time in order to give her rest, but neither of us was properly prepared for this service. So rest was obtained by spacing the sessions out over a greater period of time, and we all contented ourselves with the fact that there was a price to be paid for being able to offer this kind of service, and Carla would have to bear the brunt of that price. Carla. I cannot express the amount of pleasure I felt at being able to serve in this way. To see Donald happy and inspired was a satisfaction of the heart that struck to the depths of my being. I adored Don, and I wished to make him comfortable and happy. But he was not comfortable in this world, and so often felt painfully lonely and isolated, although this was never mentioned, nor did he show it in any way. For some reason, his pain and loneliness were always utterly apparent to me and called forth my deepest sympathy and desire to nurture. The days of the Ra contact were golden indeed. I would have died quite gladly doing one last session, and rather expected to, and embraced that freely, but Don's death came first, so I remain. The years since his death have opened to me a wonderful path of service as readers write in, and I have become counselor and friend to so many all over the world. It is as though I received a second life, for truly when Donald died, the Carla that was gone. He had taken a 25-year-old and molded her to his needs with my willing aid. I became truly his creature. When I woke up from that life, 16 years later, I was neither that 25-year-old nor Don's. I really had to start from scratch to discover my current self. Session 38, March 13th, 1981. Questioner. Will you tell us if there would be any hope or any purpose in either Jim or me taking the instrument's place as instrument by attempting the trance work ourselves? Ra. I am Ra. This information is on the borderline of infringement upon free will. We shall, however, assume your desire to constitute permission to speak slightly beyond the limits set by Confederation guidelines, shall we say. At this space-time nexus, neither the one known as Don nor the one known as Jim is available for this working. The one known as Don, by, shall we say, practicing the mechanics of contact and service to others by means of the channeling, as you call it, would in a certain length of your time become able to do this working. The one known as Jim would find it difficult to become a channel of this type without more practice, also over a longer period of time. Then we should have to experiment with the harmonics developed by this practice. This is true in both cases. The Law of One, Book 5, Fragment 24, Session 39, March 16th, 1981. Jim. The difficulties in recovering physical energy which Carla experienced as a result of the 2 experiences with LSD continued to shorten sessions and keep her condition somewhat fragile. We again saw not only the powerful effects of this chemical agent, which we do not recommend to anyone, but the even more powerful effects of unwise choices made by those who wish above all else to be of service to others. As time and experience with the Ra contact accumulated, we became increasingly aware that the honor of providing this kind of service brought with it the need for just as much responsibility for providing the service with as much purity and harmony as one was capable of producing in every facet of life experience. What was learned needed to be put to use in the daily life, or difficulties would result in the life pattern which were the means by which the subconscious mind would provide the opportunity to regain the balance and harmony which had been lost. These difficulties could then also be intensified by Orion Crusaders in the form of psychic greetings designed to stop the contact with Ra. We also discovered that every person which incarnates brings with him or her certain avenues, preferences, or ways of nurturing its inner beingness. This inner beingness is that which is the true enabler and ennobler of our daily lives. When we would ask Ra how best to aid the instrument, we would often get more specific suggestions according to the situation, but we would always be reminded of those qualities which were Carla's ways of nurturing her inner beingness. Carla. Data from the Ra contact indicates that I never had much actual physical energy at all, which fits with my own personal, subjective sense of myself as one who runs on spiritual and mental energy, and as one physically lazy. I call it laziness because I have such a hard time making myself do physical work, unless it is walking and wandering, dancing or swimming, rhythmic activities I love. Even as a young child, I was easily able to sit and read or sit and imagine for hours. So the sessions we were doing completely exhausted my actual innate physical energy quite quickly. To this very day, I think since then I have always run on nerve alone and the simple joy of being alive, which I have in abundance. Don and Jim were both very upright persons of marked integrity and character, which helped tremendously as the process of psychic greeting could only work on our inherent distortions. They loved each other and treated each other with great respect, and did their utmost to care for me. They were wonderful in making sure that all was done as well as possible to make me more comfortable. I also had the advantage of being a straight arrow kind of soul all my life, so the negative energy could only intensify my many physical problems. Thusly, the sessions were extremely wearing, but I gloried in them nevertheless, for seeing Don's pleasure in the talks with Ra was more than enough payment to me. I was, and am, careless of life force if by giving it I can see another live more fully. I should note that I see the purity that Ra speaks of in myself not as a shining virtue, nor as a personal achievement, but rather as a gift of nature. I cannot remember a time when I was other than completely involved in the passion of my life, that life itself. I saw myself as a child of God, and wanted my life to be a gift to that deity. I was drawn to virtue as others are to gambling or drugs. This inexplicable condition still prevails. My hopes for this life remain simply the giving of all I have to the Creator. What this purity is not is celibacy or retreat from the workings of the world. I have always followed my relationships and based my life around them, trusted my passion, and had an earthy, even vulgar side. I simply find life a wonder and a joy, and all the limitation, mess, loss, and pain in this world have not changed my mind on that. Session 39, March 16th, 1981. Questioner. The instrument was wondering if the fragile feeling she has now is the result of the chemical ingestion of about 6 weeks ago. Ra. I am Ra. This is correct. This instrument is now undergoing the most intensive period of physical complex debilitation distortion due to the doubling effects of the 2 ingestions. This instrument may expect this extremity to proceed for a period of 15 to 20 of your diurnal cycles. The weakness distortions will then begin to lift. However, not as rapidly as we first thought due to this instrument's weakness distortions. This instrument is very fortunate in having a support group which impresses upon it the caution necessary as regards these sessions at this time. This instrument is capable of almost instantaneously clearing the mental-emotional complex and the spiritual complex for the purity this working requires, but this instrument's distortion towards fidelity to service does not function to its best use of judgment regarding the weakness distortions of the physical complex. Thus, we appreciate your assistance at space-times such as that in your most recent decision-making not to have a working. This was the appropriate decision, and the guidance given this instrument was helpful. Questioner. Is there anything that the instrument can do in addition to what she is attempting to do to help her condition get better faster? I know that she hasn't been able to exercise because of her foot problem for the last couple of days, but we were hoping to get back to that. Is there anything else that she could do? Ra. I am Ra. As we have implied, the negative entities are moving all stops out to undermine this instrument at this time. This is the cause of the aforementioned problem with the pedal digit. It is fortunate that this instrument shall be greatly involved in the worship of the one infinite Creator through the vibratory complexes of sacred song during this period. The more active physical existence, both in the movements of exercise and in the sexual sense, are helpful. However, the requirement of this instrument's distortions towards what you would call ethics have an effect upon this latter activity. Again, it is fortunate that this instrument has the opportunities for loving social intercourse, which are of some substantial benefit. Basically, in your third density continuum, this is a matter of time. Questioner: from your reading of the instrument's condition, can you approximate how often and the length of workings we should plan on in future workings? Ra: I am Ra. This query borders upon infringement. The information given sets up fairly followable guidelines. However, we are aware that not only can each of you not read this instrument's aura and so see conditions of the physical complex, but also the instrument itself has considerable difficulty penetrating the precise distortion condition of its physical complex due to its constant dependence upon its will to serve. Therefore, we believe we are not infringing if we indicate that one working each alternate diurnal period in the matinal hours is the most appropriate, with the possibility of a shorter working upon the free matinal period if deemed appropriate. This is so not only during this period, but in general. The Law of One, Book 5, Fragment 25, Session 42, March 22nd, 1981. Jim: almost everyone on the path of consciously seeking the truth has had some kind of mystical experience that may or may not make much sense to the person. Most such experiences remain unfathomable to our conscious minds and accomplish their work in an unseen and incomprehensible fashion. Being inhabitants of the third density with the great veil of forgetting drawn over our ability to see and to truly know, we must content ourselves with the fact that we only make the barest beginnings upon understanding in this illusion. But we may also rest assured that there are no mistakes, and that the events of our lives, whether ordinary or extraordinary, fall into the appropriate place at the appropriate time. Carla: Don had several experiences of altered consciousness that were permanently etched into his mind. The initiations he spoke of here was received in 1968, while we were in meditation together. He suddenly found himself in a world where the colors were living. He said these colors made our earthly hues look like black and white photos. They were three-dimensional. He saw living waters and a golden sunrise streaming over the sky. He could open his eyes and he was in his chair, then close them again and see the other world. This state lasted about half an hour. The other event that is notable, to me, was a night he was meditating and found his arm moving rapidly up and down from elbow to fingers as his arm rested upon the chair arm. A blue light began to emanate from his lower arm, and he was forever grateful that he had had company who saw his arm turning blue and glowing. Later transmissions indicated that the UFO entities were winding his battery. Session 42, March 22nd, 1981. Questioner: I had one experience in meditation which I spoke of before, which was very profound approximately 20 years ago, a little less. What disciplines would be the most applicable to create this situation and this type of experience? Ra: I am Ra. Your experience would best be approached from the ceremonial magic stance. However, the wanderer or adept shall have the far greater potential for this type of experience, which, as you have undoubtedly analyzed to be the case, is one of an archetypal nature, one belonging to the roots of cosmic consciousness. Questioner: was that in any way related to the Golden Dawn in ceremonial magic? Ra: I am Ra. The relationship was congruency. Questioner. Then, in attempting to reproduce this experience, would I then best follow the practices for the Order of the Golden Dawn in reproducing this? Ra. I am Ra. To attempt to reproduce an initiatory experience is to move, shall we say, backwards. However, the practice of this form of service to others is appropriate in your case, working with your associates. It is not well for positively polarized entities to work singly. The reasons for this are obvious. Questioner. Then this experience was a form of initiation? Is this correct? Ra. I am Ra. Yes.